Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to support me on Patreon, and where to get Watch Barbara Knit merchandise. And today there will be a link to my new pattern because this is a pattern tour video. Today is the launch dates for my newest pattern. Technically, it went live last night because this is Thursday and I wanted all of the links to be ready for y'all to click on if you decide this is something you want to make. Have something a little bit different from you today. They are fingerless mitts. I adore fingerless mitts. I don't really live in an environment where full mittens are particularly useful, but you know, there's always times where it gets a little too chilly and you want to have something nice and soft on your hands, which is one of the reasons why it's in the yarn it is in. So these are called the Overdue Mitts. If you're interested in why they have that name, stick around to the end. But for now, I'm just going to go straight into the info on the pattern. And I just found that I did not trim an end very effectively. Oopsie. So this, I'm kind of off center. This is what they look like. I know that is looking at flat mitts is not particularly exciting. Let me put one of them on. So here we go. This is my new fingerless mitt. It is slip stitch color work. So this is not stranded in any way. Let me turn the other one inside out so you can see, because it kind of looks cool on the inside as well. But here you go. You can see that you're not carrying any yarn. It's not two strands of yarn going across every single round. There's that thing I forgot to trim. I need to trim that off. And you can see that you carry the yarn up the inside. You can see that one little spiral that's going up. And so it's not double thick. And you don't have a lot of floats. You don't have to deal with any float management because you're just knitting stripes and slipping stitches. Now, to get the effect that I have here, so it looks like stranded knitting, it looks like Fair Isle, we're knitting one round stripes. So, round one would be in the green, and then round two in the pink, then green, pink, green, pink. Instead of the typical where you do two rows or rounds of one color, two rows or rounds of the other color, where you're striping 2, 2, 2, 2, this is striped 1, 1, 1, 1. And that is how I get this. I kind of, in my brain, call it faux, F-A-U-X, Isle instead of Fair Isle. And you get this really cool nubbly effect. I did the pictures with my mother. I'm going to show you a pic of it so you can really see. One of the details is that the thumb is in a contrasting, so in the hand of the pattern, the color work, the green is very much dominant and the pink is the spots. In the thumb, I reversed it out so that, and it's hard to see. The reason why I'm showing you this picture is because I couldn't figure out a good way to turn my hand to let y'all see that it's the whole thumb gusset. Let me flatten this out. So the whole thumb gusset, see, it's impossible, which is why we have this. It is the thumb gusset, and the entire thumb gusset is worked, and then the thumb itself with the colors flipped. So the pink is dominant and the green are the spots. And realistically, you don't have to do it in pink and green. So color A is the pink, which is Neverland, and color B is the green, which is lettuce. So if you wanted whatever your color combo is, whatever color you want to be dominant is the one that you're going to call color B. And the reason why that is because you cast on with color A which is the beginning, because it starts at the bottom and then works its way up. But here you can see the thumbs, and I think it looks pretty cool. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty. I make myself laugh. So these are, it's DK weight yarn. It's Dos Tierras. A little bit more on that in just a second. You're going to need a US size 4 and a US size 6 needle. That's 3.5 millimeters and 4 millimeters. The reason why you need two different sizes is I did the ribbing on the cuff and around the fingers, and on the thumb, I did the ribbing in one down, so it tightens and neatens it up and gives it that ribbing effect so that it helps things stay on. It's very common to do in mitts and hats and things because people's tension when they're doing a knit one, purl one repeat tends to get a little looser because you're going back and forth from knit to purl, to knit to purl, to knit to purl. So that is why you go down a needle size. I used magic loop to knit these, but you could of course do it on DPNs or the flexi flips or Haya flyers or 2 circular needles, whatever technique that you prefer for knitting a small circumference in the round, that's the one you're going to use, but you're going to want a 4 and a 6 or a 3.5 and a 4 millimeter. Now, I only used, to make both mitts, I only used about half of each skein. I am probably going to be coming out with a cowl pattern when I have the opportunity to knit it up. It'll be fairly simple and it'll match, or I might play with it. I haven't decided yet. And so you're going to need roughly between 190 and 200 yards of DK weight yarn, and it's about like split evenly between the two, so it's about 100 yards of each color. If you wanted to make this longer, you definitely could. You could, because this, as you saw, let me put on the other one. These are just, you know, regular regular glove length. If you wanted to make it longer, you definitely could if you had more yarn. I don't know that I'd do a longer on here, but if you have really long fingers, you know, you could make it longer on the finger part too. I do have particularly little stumpy fingers, so I make sure when I design them that they come up fairly high on my pinky finger, because I know most people's fingers are longer than mine, but you could definitely elongate this part, this distance here. If that's one of the great things about knitting. You can customize something to your own personal desires. It comes out to be about 7.5 inches in circumference. That's 19 centimeters, and it's pretty stretchy in both directions. So the stitches that are used are knit 2 together, make one left, make one right, purl 2 together, slip, and the backwards loop cast on. That is just here where the thumb joins. You got to cast on 1 stitch to bring your stitch count correctly. And the knit 2 togethers and purl 2 togethers, I believe, are only in the bind off, so it's not like an integral part of the pattern. And if you decide you want to substitute and do a different bind off, that is entirely up to you. I did a in pattern knit 1 purl 1 bind off that's actually knit 2 together, purl 2 together, and I thought it came out really nice. But if you want to use a different bind off, you totally can, and you won't have to do knit 2 together and purl 2 together. And so the romance language is what we call the description that you get, like, to explain what's going on. And I said, I do not think I will ever have enough texture knitting to satisfy me. And it's true. Lace and cables might distract me with their flamboyance, is a good word, but texture is deeply satisfying that it keeps drawing me back in. And I said, you will just have to knit these mitts to feel they're nubbly. And it's funny, I showed you the picture when my mother was modeling these for me. She just kept on doing this with her hands. She was like, they're so textury, they're so nubbly. You can see how I roll that? You can see that it's got such a nice bumpy, and it's actually unusual in that at the end of this, I do tell you to, let me get the words, block gently to avoid disturbing the texture. So you do want to block it just to get the stitches if you use this yarn, you want to let the yarn bloom, and it really makes it much, much softer, and it fills in and makes your color work really nice. And it'll change size a little bit, but you don't want to stretch this one. It'll stretch when it goes on your hand. Now, this pattern is just written. There are no charts, so if you're not a chart fan, don't worry about that in this pattern. You're going to need some stitch markers for this, because the instructions for the thumb gusset are definitely one of these where you place a marker and then you're going to increase on the inside. You'll have two markers and you increase on the inside of those markers to make the thumb gusset grow. And then you're going to have to transfer your thumb stitches to waste yarn. And so you will need a yarn needle and waste yarn to transfer those thumb stitches to hold on to them. Once you've finished the hand, you come back and pick up the stitches around the thumb, and you just, it's not any rows. You just need a little tiny little bit of thumb just to get it to poke up a little bit, because otherwise it would just be like unfinished down here. But you know what, if you don't want to do the thumb, you could probably just bind it off and your thumb will just poke out. It's no big deal. So let's talk a little bit about the yarn. Here it is. So this yarn was supplied to me by Malabrigo, and it is Dos Tierras. So Dos Tierras means two lands, reflecting the sources of the two amazing fibers found in this ultra soft yarn. What this is it's 50% merino wool and 50% baby alpaca. It is super, super soft, but it has a body that 100% alpaca, 100% alpaca is going to be super, super drapey and fuzzy. So this is like a really nice in-between kind of place. It's got the softness and the extra warmth that the alpaca brings, but it doesn't have all the fuzz. It doesn't shed the way that some alpacas can. And it's got that strength from the wool, which is really great because these are fingerless mitts and they'll probably get a good bit of wear and tear on your hands. Now, I used, and these are all the colors that it comes in, I used Neverland right here for the pink. Actually, again, I am gesturing with my mouse and I don't think you can see it. So you've got Neverland, which is right here. And then I used, look at all these amazing colors. Lettuce. Lettuce is right here. So those are the two colors I chose. I really like the pink and green, and that's one of the reasons I'm releasing it when I am, because it has a really, you only need these because it's the last of the cold. It's a springy like color combination, but I thought I'd show you all the different amazing colors that this yarn comes in. Now, it could be interesting to do it in one of the variegateds, because what's going to happen if you use one of the variegateds and you do it in place of the pink is all of these little dots, all of these little bumps are going to be multicolor. So I'd really like to see how that comes out. Not 100% sure it's going to work, but if you like experimenting, that could be a lot of fun. Okay, so let me make sure I told you, you need two contrasting colors. You need about 100 yards of each. I just used one skein of each and had leftovers. And I think that is pretty much it. There's one little detail in the pattern. So there's actually definitely a left and a right mitt. In the pattern, it has instructions and it's like, do it this way for the left mitt and do it this way for the right mitt. Now, if you want to do them both the same, you totally can, because the reason why I did left and right is really, really subtle, and it's just because it's because of me, okay? So when you put on a mitt, right, your thumb isn't like exactly, it's kind of offset a little bit. So here, I'm going to put on the left mitt, right? So here's the thumb, there's the gusset, and it's not precisely, it's not like the beginning of round is on this edge and then your thumb is on this edge. And what I wanted to do is make sure that beginning of round ran down the side of the mitt so that it was in the least visible place, because there is just a really, really subtle, you can see where that beginning of round is, the tension management of the slip stitches. It was visible to me. I could see it. I know it's really, really subtle. So if I put it on, if I put this is the left mitt on the right hand, you can see right here, it's moved in like it's wrapped around like a 1/4 inch. And so instead of it being straight down the side, it's a 1/4 inch this way and it's visible. So I shifted the thumbs a little bit this way and a little bit that way away from how far it is from the beginning of round so that that seam is down the side. If you're not a very precision oriented person like me, if being able to see, if that is not a concern for you, if you're looking at this and going, Barbara, I can't even tell what you're talking about, then don't worry about it. Just do them both the same. You never have to worry about which one's your left hand and which one's your right hand. But if you are like me and enjoy precision and are a little on the controlling side, you can do the left-right versions so that the seam, and here I'm going to show you this. See this, my right hand, you can see that seam because on this one, this was my very first one, I did it precisely across. So in the instructions, if you do the right, this is what it's going to look like on this hand. If you do the not left, right, it's going to look like this. And I made sure to do the math so that the way it's written, if you do the left and right, it's going to look like this, where it's going to be precisely on the edge instead of wrapped around a little bit. Does that make sense? It may be something only I would notice. It may be just I have a level of attention to detail when I'm designing that might be a little over the top, but it's just what I do. So these are the Overdue Mitts, and I appreciate and thank Malabrigo for sending me this yarn to work with. Now, why are they called Overdue Mitts? Well, because the pattern is way, way overdue. I received this yarn as part of a yarn support request where I asked for yarn for 3 shawls and yarn for these fingerless mitts. Malabrigo, when I work with them, usually prefers, if I ask them for yarn, for me to ask for multiple different projects, if I have multiple different projects in mind, because they have to ship it from Uruguay. And they're like, as long as we're shipping your yarn, let's just, we don't want to be shipping small amounts. Let's ship for multiple different projects. And the thing is, this yarn, I requested it in the beginning of 2020. It was early in 2020. And then, 2020 happened. And I lost a lot of motivation. And I spent a lot of time playing video games, just to be honest. 2020, I think for a lot of us was a little on the traumatic side. And although you would like to think that because we were trapped in our houses, I spent all my time knitting, but I had no motivation. And then I did start knitting, and then I started having problems with my thumb. And if you've been around for a while, you saw those videos. So it's just been, and then once you've had something for a certain length of time, it's just like, oh my gosh, the idea of starting it and being so late. It's hard to start that project because you're so late and you're embarrassed. You're embarrassed that you're so late. But this yarn, this gorgeous, gorgeous yarn has been sitting on my shelf and staring at me accusingly since 2020. And I knew exactly what I wanted to make. These mitts have been in my brain with this super fun, super easy two-color, I call this two-color seed stitch. It's just slips, knits, and purls. That's all that's going on. I think it is really cool, and I want to do it in lots of other things. I think it's like a really great filler type pattern. I mean, I've used it in little bits in other patterns, but I wanted to do a pattern that was all this, so people could maybe fall in love with it to the extent that I did. I think it's a great, it works best in the round because, again, it's one row stripes. But, sidetracked. I got a little sidetracked. I knew what I wanted to do. It was in my brain. I had the yarn. It was simply finding the motivation to get it done. So these are called the Overdue Mitts because this pattern is long, long overdue. So if you are a procrastinator, if you have put things off, these are the mitts that you can make. They can be your mitts of motivation if something's overdue to get it done, or just, you know, if you have yarn that's been sitting around and it's overdue for you to make something out of that DK weight yarn, also a good plan. So I hope you enjoyed this pattern tour. I hope that you think that these, if fingerless mitts are on your list of something to knit, maybe consider these. Again, it's just about 200 yards of DK and 100 yards in two colors. And there probably will be a cowl coming out. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.